Hey, everybody. It's Tuesday, October the 4th, 2022, and it's time for the latest edition of the Bullpen with Adam the Bull. I'm looking grubby today. I'll be honest, it's early in the morning. I'm doing this podcast at 6:43 a.m. I had a weird night's sleep, and I was like, you know what? Why wait till 7:30 to do the podcast? Let's just get it going right now. A lot that I want to talk about on today's program, mostly about the Browns. I'll get back to the Guardians in a couple days, although I will hit on them for a few minutes. But right now, the Guardians are just playing out the string, and we don't know who they're going to play in the playoffs yet. I'll talk about that a little bit at the end of the show. But for now, a lot of Browns talk today. I'll have to still look back at the last game, but mostly to look ahead and the state of the NFL at, normally after 4 games it'd be the quarter pole, but because we play 17 now, it's not quite the quarter pole, but we'll just kind of look at where everything stands. A lot to get to. I think I've said that 3 times already, so we'll keep it moving, as my man G. Bush would say. It's the Bullpen with Adam the Bull.
Podcast is not for the faint of heart.
And I do think it's time for the Browns to move on.
It's not for those who ride the fence.
He's proven nothing.
But if you're looking for someone who tells it like it is about Cleveland sports,
Everybody does fandom their way.
you've come to the right place.
I don't think he's any good.
It's time for the Bullpen with Adam the Bull.
I had quite the weird night last night. I usually go to bed like 11, 12. It depends on what sports are going on, what's happening. I was so tired yesterday. Didn't watch the Guardians game. I didn't watch Monday Night Football. I was just like, I was zonked. I was kind of laying in bed by 7. I was in and out. I went to sleep like 9:30. Woke up in the middle of the night. My son wasn't feeling well. All kinds of weird shenanigans happening. But here we are. I actually got a decent night's sleep when it's all said and done, although you wouldn't know it by my triple bags under my eyes and my grubby beard. But I'm never too tired to talk about the Cleveland Browns. And as we head into Week 5, now that Monday Night Football is over, and the Browns get ready to play their toughest opponent yet, at home, the LA Chargers. And they've opened as like a 3-point underdog at home. 8 of the 16 teams in the AFC are 2-2. There's 3 AFC teams that are 3-1. One, the Dolphins, who just lost their first game and have lost their starting quarterback. The other 2, not a surprise, Kansas City and Buffalo, the 2 teams you probably expected to be the 2 best teams in the AFC. Then we have 8 teams that are 2-2 after that, and then the Colts, who are 1-2-1. And then the only teams worse than that, New England at 1-3, Raiders at 1-3, the Steelers at 1-3, and the Texans at 0-3-1. Some people may be surprised by some of that. I'm a little surprised the Raiders are off to a bad start. But here's the thing, folks, and I think we forget this every year. I understand why there's doom and gloom surrounding the Browns, because they played what on paper is their softest part of the schedule, and to realistically, it feels like to realistically make the playoffs, they had to go at least 3-1, if not 4-0, in these first 4 games. I had said you got to go 3-1, but I think you really needed to go 4-0. Well, they didn't. Obviously, they're 2-2. The 2 games they won, they let get away. I mean, we could argue that in many games. Most NFL games could go both ways by 1 or 2 plays, right? It's not uncommon. The Browns' defense to this point has been a huge disappointment. The offense has been a pleasant surprise, but or at least the passing game, I would say, has been a pleasant surprise. The running game has been what we expected, or maybe even better. I mean, I don't know if you could expect it better. We had pretty high hopes for the running game, and it's been amazing. The defense, though, has been a huge disappointment. Special teams has not been good. Well, Cade York is, for the most part, has done an excellent job, but overall special teams has not been good. And so that's why you sit a 500 team like most of the NFL. Now, when you look at how many good quarterbacks you have to face the rest of the way, the Browns, who are competing with the Bengals and Steelers, we hope, in the division, the Bengals and Ravens in the division, have to face more high-quality quarterbacks than the Bengals and Ravens do at this point. The Bengals and Ravens have had a tougher schedule at this point earlier in the year, a little bit. But the Bengals had 2 bad losses also. And so have the Ravens. The Ravens have blown big leads in their 2 losses. Not that they lost their 2 losses were to Miami and And Buffalo, not bad losses in terms of the opponent, but bad losses in terms of the way they lost those leads. They were up big in both of those games. As for the Bengals, it's more about the opponent. They lost to the Steelers, who are a bad team, or at least I think they're a bad team. They've looked like a bad team so far. Their offense is hideous. They also lost to the Cowboys without Dak Prescott, although, what's his name? The Cowboys quarterback, whose name is escaping me, Cooper Rush, right? Yeah, Cooper Rush has won 3 straight games. His other wins against the Giants and Commanders, but, nevertheless, he's played pretty well so far. The point is, in the end, we all make our predictions before the season. I thought the Browns would go 9-8 and finish in third. I thought that was their most likely scenario. I did think there was a path to get to the playoffs, but when you're playing 11 of your first 17 games with a quarterback who's in the bottom quarter of the league, that's what you expect. However, Jacoby Brissett, through 4 games, is not playing like a bottom quarter of the league quarterback. If you would have told me before the season that Jacoby Brissett would be playing, at least according to PFF, he's a top 10 quarterback right now. That's unlikely to last. But overall, he's played well. I mean, you look at the 4 games, I think he's played 2 very, especially for what I expect for him, he's played 2 very good games, 1 okay game, and 1 bad game. I would have signed for that, and I would have assumed if that happened that the Browns would be at least 3-1, if not 4-0. And as we've said before, they easily could have been, but I could say that about a lot of teams. And so you can't, at this point, you can't worry about that. You got to move forward and say, hey, can the Browns win against some teams that maybe on paper I don't expect them to? And what we've seen in the NFL so far this year is the answer is yes. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. It means it certainly can. Right? I mean, we were all up in arms that the Browns lost to the Falcons. I don't think the Falcons are a very good team, but the reality is the Browns were only a 1-point favorite. It's not like this was some massive upset. The Browns were a 1-point favorite in that game. I think some people are reacting to the game as if the Browns were a double-digit favorite. Not the case. Again, let me make it clear. I expected the Browns to win. I picked them to win. I thought they'd win. But this is no massive upset that they lost to the Falcons. And the same can be said this week. I mean, obviously the Chargers with Justin Herbert right now are a better team than the Browns because they've got an excellent quarterback. However, they've not played great football. They're 2-2. Until last week, they hadn't run the ball particularly well. Herbert's a little banged up, and they've got issues they've got some other issues there in terms of injuries too. So, and they're a 3-point favorite in Cleveland. That's, again, this is not a miracle if the Browns win the game. West Coast teams coming to the East, it's often a struggle there. This is not I'll give you an example, a Bills-Steelers situation. The Bills are a 14-point favorite at home against the Steelers. Wow. When's the last time the Steelers were a 14-point underdog? Other teams in the division are playing each other. That's the Bengals and the Ravens. They are playing on Sunday Night Football, and the Ravens are a 3-point favorite at home against the Bengals. So that should be a good one that we can all watch Sunday. So, anyway, when we look at the Browns situation heading into this 5th game with the Chargers and the competition getting better, I think, when you look, when the Browns look back at missed opportunities here in the first 4 games, the hope is that the offense can continue to play well enough, right? I mean, through 4 games, again, the Browns have scored 105 points. That's 26 points a game. A little more than that, actually. Averaging 26.25 points per game, the Browns at that number should win more than they lose. The problem is the defense hasn't been good enough. We talked about that. Defense, although they have outscored their opponents, the defense is giving up 24 points a game. And you just wouldn't have guessed that. You wouldn't have guessed that the offense would be this differential. So now here's the hope. The hope is you can get healthy up front. We know we're not getting Anthony Walker back. Hopefully, Clowney and Myles Garrett can get back on the field soon. I don't know if it's going to happen this week. We shall see. I'm not really worried about New England the week after that, but for the rest of the big games after the Chargers and then the Patriots, the other 5 games before Deshaun Watson comes back, hopefully by that point, you think there's a decent chance that Garrett and Clowney will both be back, especially Clowney, who's already been practicing a little bit. Myles Garrett, who knows, off this accident, he hasn't practiced yet, and we don't, maybe there's stuff we don't know. So if the defense can get straightened out, then they have a chance. They'll have a chance with the way the offense is playing if it can continue. Again, I don't expect Jadeveon Clowney. I don't expect Jacoby Brissett to be as good as he was in the first quarter of the season. They're playing better competition. He is a guy who is a backup quarterback for a reason. The more he plays, the more exposed he gets. He's likely to struggle some. Now, maybe that won't happen because, contrary to popular belief this week, after what happened against the Falcons, Kevin Stefanski does design a pretty good game plan for the most part and does put Jacoby Brissett in a position to have success. I know that's not a popular take because Stefanski made some mistakes. And I think his not having Nick Chubb at times on the field late in the game, as he did this past game in the Falcons, is a major negative on his resume. But I still think his resume as an offensive coach is still more good than bad. And so so there is still some hope that Jacoby Brissett could play at a decent level with help from his head coach. Take a break. Got a lot more to get to on the Browns coming up in just a moment. First, I want to talk to Sleeper, fastest growing fantasy platform. Over 4 million plus users. In addition, they just launched 22 new features, including over-unders integrated into fantasy. The first sports contest built into the fantasy experience. Not only can you enter a contest via over-under itself, but you can also do so through your fantasy league's matchup screen. It's super simple. First, in any sport, choose 2 or more players that you like and pick the over-under. For example, rushing yards in football, number of points in basketball. Then choose the amount of money you want to enter into the contest. If you pick correctly, you can win anywhere from 2 to over 20 times the money you put in. This is an amazing deal. Also, Over Under on Sleeper is the only app where I can join my friends' contests and play together. We could talk trash. It's a lot of fun. So stop what you're doing. Download the Sleeper app now to play the Over Under game. Have fun, make some money, talk trash. It's going to be beautiful. On your mobile phone, join our listener group on Sleeper to sleeper.com/lockedonbets or sleeper.com/lockedontoday, and Sleeper will automatically match your first deposit up to $100. Again, go to sleeper.com/lockedonbets, sleeper.com/lockedontoday, and you get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Okay, so as we start to turn the page and look ahead to the Chargers this week, we talked about briefly Justin Herbert having that rib issue. Now, he did look much better this past week. He's really struggled against Jacksonville. This past week against the Texans, now, I didn't see I shouldn't say he looked much better because I didn't see him personally because I didn't watch that game. I usually bounce around the other games when the Browns aren't playing, but I don't think I saw any of this game at all. But statistically, he had a big game, 340 yards, completed, almost 70% of his passes, 2 touchdowns, no picks, and he was only sacked once. So it looks like he was okay. Mike Williams had a big game. Now, listen, this is it's a dangerous team. One thing to look at here is that obviously Mike Williams is a really good young receiver. He can be a little inconsistent. And Austin Eckler, who's their top back, and Eckler has struggled. And last week he finally had a good game in 109 yards total. He's usually big in the passing game and did have 5 catches for 61 yards and a touchdown in this last game. But one other big thing to note heading into this game is the status of Keenan Allen. He's been out since, I believe, week 1. He didn't play again this past week with an injury. It'll be big. It'll be very big if he doesn't play again. Obviously, he's a great veteran receiver, great route runner. tremendous talent, he makes, Eckler and Mike Williams even more dangerous. That's a big advantage for the Browns if he doesn't play. I mentioned Eckler. Obviously, he's one of the best backs out of the backfield in terms of catching passes, and he's, obviously he's had some success running the ball as well. But last week was the first week he had a decent game, and they haven't been running it that much with him. They've thrown. He has 45 carries and 29 targets. They've run a little with Sony Michel, but overall they have not run the ball well. Austin Eckler, despite averaging over 4.5 yards per carry against the Texans this past Sunday, is still barely over 3 yards per carry on the season. He didn't run it well. Now, obviously the Browns got run all over by Atlanta, and if they can't get some of their guys healthy on the defensive line, you would think that's something the Chargers would target. However, they're a team that likes to throw the ball, and obviously that's their strength because their quarterback is a phenomenal player. But they ran the ball. They threw the ball in a game they were winning. I mean, think about this. They were up 27-7 at the half. So it's a game where they didn't need to throw the ball, and they still threw it 39 times, and not including, Justin Herbert kneel downs, they only ran the ball 23 times. So they were over 60% in the air in a game that they were winning the entire time. So that tells you what they want to do. They want to throw the ball. That's who they are. That, in theory, that should benefit the Browns because the Browns secondary, in theory, is the strength of their defense, especially with Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney out. That hasn't, in practice, been the case so far this year. I mean, it was better this past week, although the reality is they haven't faced a good quarterback yet, so we don't know how they're going to look. Teams have run the ball well on the Chargers so far. Last week, rookie Dameon Pierce of the Texans had a monster game. The week before, James Robinson and Travis Etienne combined 30 carries for 145 yards. That's just under 5 yards per carry. So the Chargers have, not done well against the run. Even the Chiefs game, and the Chiefs, like the Chargers, don't run the ball much, but the Chiefs ran it for over 5 yards a carry, and that's with some kneel downs and their starting back, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, only ran it 8 times, but he had 74 yards. So I think looking ahead to this game with the Chargers, the matchup in a way plays to the Browns' favor, that the Chargers have not been good against the run. Really, the lead back in every game against the Chargers this year has dominated. Now, some of these games have been a little one-sided, and so the teams haven't been able to run as much. But even in the first week with the Raiders, who have not played well and don't have a great running game, Josh Jacobs had 10 carries for 57 yards. So the lead back for every team against the Chargers has had a good game. And none of those teams, the Raiders, Josh Jacobs, solid back. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, to me, at best is average. James Robinson, Jaguars, solid back. And Dameon Pierce is a young player. We don't know what he is yet, but he, I don't think anybody's expecting him to be a superstar. The Browns have 2 backs better than any of the backs the Chargers have faced, and the Chargers have been dominated on the ground. So you're playing a team that wants to throw the ball, which should be your strength defensively. Again, I'm making it very clear that should be. It hasn't been the case. I think I keep hoping for it to be. I think it was a little better this week. We still saw a breakdown on one big play. We can't have that. Overall, the secondary, I thought, it was an improvement, especially considering that the situation they were dealing with, the fact that up front the Browns were decimated and they had to overcome that and, had to have more guys in the box to stop the run because that's what the Falcons were doing, and that makes it obviously a challenge in the passing game. But on the other hand, I would expect the Browns to try to – I'm not a big, time of possession guy. I think that can be overrated. But when you're playing a team that has an explosive passing game, especially if Keenan Allen comes back and Justin Herbert is, relatively healthy, which again, by all accounts, he was last week, when they're looking to throw the ball and strike quickly, the Browns have to keep them off the field as much as possible. And the Browns' ability to run the ball is amongst the best, if not the best in the league. And the Chargers, so far, inability to stop the run has been a factor. That's part of the reason they're 2-2 on the season. They haven't, they handled the Texans fairly easily. But besides that, I mean, they were up 17-3 on the Raiders in the first half of that game. But, the Raiders weren't completely out of it. In fact, they were within 5 points, I think, in the final 5 minutes. So, like we talk about all the time, most of these games are close. I expect this game to be close. I think the Browns do have a chance to win. I know coming off the bad loss, what's funny to me is, and this is not specific to Browns fans. This is all fans, except for a few fan bases that are maybe overly cocky because their teams have been good for so long. But most fan bases, we are reactionary, right? So the next week, our expectation for the Browns or whatever team we root for is a lot based on, we can say it's what we thought going into the season or the whole scope of the season so far. But the reaction to this game is based, for a lot of people, will be, whether they admit it or not, based solely on the disappointing loss this past week to the Falcons. We're all going to assume the Browns won't be able to stop the run against the Chargers. It'll be interesting to me whether the Chargers fully commit to running the ball, which would be pretty smart if Clowney and Garrett and the Browns are still as hamstrung up front as they were last week. But I just don't think that's in their DNA. I think they're going to continue to throw the ball. I will break it down more as the week goes along, but we'll leave it there for now. All right, quick break, and then I got a few thoughts on the Guardians. We do have 2 games left in the regular season, and we'll give you a little 411 on who they're going to play in the first round. We don't know yet, but what's the most likely scenario? Get to it in a minute. Okay, so Guardians lost the game yesterday. No big deal. Lost in extra innings. Overall, they've continued to play great baseball here, even after they've clinched. They've maintained focus. They did win their 90th game on Sunday. So, I mean, if you would have told me before the season the Guardians would win 90 games, I would think that was so highly unlikely. So proud of this team. They've been great. They're 1 game behind Toronto for the 3rd best record in the American League. The Guardians will not play Toronto in the first round. The question is, will they be hosting the Rays or will they be hosting the Mariners? And that is still to be determined. The Mariners actually have 3 games left. They must assume it was a rain out earlier in the season, but I'm not 100% sure. It doesn't really matter. They are playing a doubleheader with the Rangers today. I think it's the Rangers. Let me just double check that. I'm sorry. They're playing a doubleheader with the Tigers, not the Rangers. So the Mariners have 3 games left, doubleheader today with Tigers, and 1 more with Tigers tomorrow. The Rays, they have 2 games left against Boston, and the Rays have dropped 3 in a row. And they're not playing great baseball. In fact, they've lost, 7 of their last 9 games. Now, I know a lot of people are scared of the Rays and would rather play the Mariners. To me, at this point, it doesn't really matter. Both of these teams can pitch well. Both of these teams are not great offensive clubs. You're going to have to deal with some good pitching. I think the Mariners' pitching right now looks a little sharper to me than the Rays. But that could be some prisoner of the moment because the Rays have kind of struggled here down the stretch. The Guardians, for all their struggles early in the season, the Guardians' offense, I'd take over the Rays or the Mariners right now. But there's no doubt that both of those teams' rotations are a challenge. But I do think the Mariners is better. At first I was like, I'd rather not play the Rays. And right now it's like, all right, bring it on. Whoever it is, Mariners, Rays, doesn't matter. How will it be determined? Well, the Mariners are a game and a half up on the Rays, 2 in the loss column. So you would think that it's unlikely that the Guardians would play the Mariners at this point. However, if they do end up tied, the Guardians will play the Mariners because the Rays have the tiebreaker over the Mariners. So if the two teams finish tied, the Rays will be the 5 seed and the Mariners will be the 6. However, the Mariners with a 2-game lead in the loss column, if they need their magic number to clinch that 5 seed is 2. So if they sweep the doubleheader today, then that's it. The Guardians are playing the Rays. If they split and the Rays lose, same thing. However, if the Mariners get swept and the Rays win, well, then they're tied going into the last day, and we won't know, the last day of the season being tomorrow. So I think if you're the Guardians, you can't worry about it. I think at this point, maybe they have a preference. But I don't think it matters. They're very similar teams. In fact, look at this. I mean, on the season, now again, the Mariners have played one less game, but still. The Mariners have scored 669 runs. The Rays have scored 663. The Mariners have allowed 607 runs. The Rays 602. Very similar teams. Now, for what it's worth, the Mariners have been a much better road team than the Rays. Who knows if that translates to the playoffs? I think about the first playoff game I saw at Progressive Field was against the Rays in the wild card almost a decade ago now at this point. Rays did win that game, but the Rays 35-44 on the road. The Mariners are 44-37 on the road. They actually have a better road record. Well, I guess technically no. They have one more win on the road and 2 more losses, but they basically have an equal record home and road, whereas the Rays are way better at home. They have the best home record in the American League and a terrible road record. Does that matter? I don't know. I think they're going to end up playing the Rays because I can't see the Mariners losing more than 1 out of 3 games to the Tigers at this point, even though they don't have much to clinch, much to play for. They're going to be on the road in this first round anyway. The 5 and 6 seed don't matter. It just matters who you play. The Mariners and Rays will be the road teams in the first round. It's just who's going to Toronto and who's going to Cleveland. Does any team have a preference? Who knows? I think at this moment, I'd rather play the Rays. Maybe I'll look back and regret that, but I think that's what's going to happen. I think at this point, it's highly likely the Guardians going to end up playing the Rays. But more on that coming up. All right, thanks for joining me today. Everybody have a great day out there. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, Adam the Bull, AdamTheBull.com, and check out my cameo at, surprisingly enough, Adam the Bull. Check out the Locked On Browns podcast. Subscribe to that with my man G. Bush and Jeff Lloyd. And always, please, watch the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Weekdays, streaming live 11 to 1 on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell so you get the alerts for whenever my podcasts come up, whenever the show is on, and whenever we're doing special events, including post-game shows, the 2-minute warning show. There's going to be baseball playoffs, the Ohio State game, post-games, all the Browns post-game, all the special videos we send out. It's all coming your way if you subscribe and hit the bell. Talk to you tomorrow right here in the bullpen with Adam the Bull.